Observer representation boundary describe a structural condition in which observation does not operate directly on reality, but through representations shaped by the system being observed. The central distinction is simple. Observation is not access. Representation is not reality. Recognition is not understanding. A system can appear visible while remaining structurally opaque. It can produce reports, indicators, dashboards, models, categories, and interfaces, while the actual conditions behind those forms exceed what an observer can see, interpret, or govern. The problem is not that observers are always careless. The problem is that observation is mediated before it begins. An observer rarely receives the system itself. The observer receives a stabilized form of the system. That form may be useful, necessary, and coherent, but it is not access. At system scale, the distance between representation and observation widens. Operations multiply, dependencies thicken, interactions accelerate, yet the forms used to make those systems visible remain bounded. Reports have limits, dashboards have limits, categories have limits, models have limits. At this point, a representation ceiling forms. A representation ceiling is the maximum complexity a system can render observable without destabilizing its own coherence. Beyond this ceiling, additional detail is compressed, discarded, simplified, or translated into categories that can be handled. The system does not become empty, it becomes selectively opaque. This produces a visibility gap. The visibility gap is a distance between what the system contains and what its stabilized representations allow observers to see. The system may keep functioning, its indicators may remain coherent, its formal outputs may appear legible, but the observer's field has become narrower than the system's actual complexity. Recognition then becomes a second boundary. To recognize something is not only to notice it, it is to stabilize it within an existing interpretive form. A signal becomes visible when it can be named. A risk becomes actionable when the system has a form in which that risk can appear. This means that recognition also excludes. What does not fit the available forms may remain unseen, not because it is absent, but because the system has no stable way to register it. Recognition collapse occurs when observers do not see nothing. They see only what fits. This is why replacing the observer does not always solve the problem. A more attentive observer may still be bound by the same reports. A more responsible institution may still act through representations that cannot carry the complexity of the field. The boundary is structural before it is personal. AI can intensify this boundary. A model can produce an apparently complete summary of a system, but representational coherence does not guarantee observability of the underlying field. The observer sees continuity. The system may contain discontinuity. The observer sees a stabilized surface. The system may contain unresolved pressure, hidden dependency, delay failure, or unrecognized drift. Observer representation boundary is not an argument against representation. Systems need representation in order to become observable at all. The question is whether the representation remains accountable to the complexity it claims to make visible. A useful representation reduces complexity without pretending that reduction has preserved everything. A dangerous representation reduces complexity while presenting itself as complete. Observers do not fail only because they misread. They fail when the system gives them representations that can be read, while withholding the conditions that would make reading sufficient. Naming declaration. The observer representation boundary originates within meta-writing ecology as a structural model for describing the limit between what a system represents and what an observer can see, recognize, interpret, or govern. Here, observer means any person, institution, model, interface, audit process, or analytic system that encounters a field through representational forms. Here, representation means any stabilized proxy through which reality is made visible. a report, metric, interface, category, model, summary, dashboard, document, or recognized form. This model is not derived from cognitive bias theory, epistemology, information theory, HCI, organizational sense making, system auditing, or AI governance literature. These fields may intersect with it, but they do not define its bloodline. The model belongs to meta-writing ecology as a structural account of how visibility, recognition, and governance become limited when representation outruns observability.